We are back with more NFL coverage, and to get straight into it, on Sunday, KaVontae Turpin would be arrested on misdemeanor charges. They included, according to this article from the Associated Press on the NFL website, marijuana possession charge and also the unlawful carrying of a weapon. As this article also prefaces, it's not his first encounter with the law in his entire professional career. He's had legal troubles beforehand, and honestly, as this quote says here, Turpin's TCU career ended in 2018 when he was kicked off the team after the school found out about a second domestic violence case against him, and he had multiple cases at this particular time involving the very same person. So that ended his tenure there, and his rise to at least a solid contributor on the NFL stage has taken quite the interesting path since then. His college career was cut short. Then he spent time in all of these spring leagues that would eventually go defunct during the height of the pandemic. And then he landed in the USFL, broke out, and managed to get himself a roster spot on the Cowboys. He had one of his better seasons in terms of receiving, if not his very best season, putting up career highs of 31 catches and 420 receiving yards in the last year. And he also signed a 3-year deal worth $18 million in the early offseason. So he's certainly become a solid player for them at this point. And even Brian Schottenheimer has stated that they want him to be a little bit more involved in the offensive schemes he's trying to run. You just do not, and I said this when I covered Theodore Lenoir as well, while you're glad to see that it didn't turn into anything much worse, and that it's just him being caught with possessing marijuana and caught with just merely possessing a gun, even if it is unlawful. It could have been so much worse than that if he did not manage to get stopped for this. So you're glad to see it from that perspective, but you do not want your players, especially when you wrap them up on these deals, you don't want all of these off the field things to start flaring up like this. And I'm sure that he is trying to turn things around for sure. Like, obviously those domestic violence cases are not a good look, but I'm not about to sit here and blackmail the guy for what happened in the past. He's clearly been trying to move on from it and better his life. But you don't want to, while you are currently in the process of making it to where you want to be, you don't want to keep on having these slip-ups like this. So hopefully he can learn from this and put it behind him. Like, you just do not want to continue repeating those same mistakes from his standpoint. Former Cowboys tight end Pettis Norman passed away at the age of 86 on Tuesday. He had a solid career with the Cowboys, putting up good numbers overall in his career, and he split time eventually with the Chargers as he was traded from Dallas to Los Angeles in exchange for Lance Allworth at the time. After that, they did win the Super Bowl in the following season, but his production was still grand for them. In 162 games and 12 seasons, he had 183 catches for 2,492 yards and 15 touchdowns. And back then, to have those kinds of numbers as a productive tight end, a serviceable tight end for all those years, is great. However, as they detailed throughout this entire article, and given the sentiments expressed here, how many of his teammates surrounding him still feel to this day, his impact goes far beyond football. They mention within the very opening sentence of this article that he was outspoken on issues of civil rights in the 1960s. As this quote says right here, Norman went on to coach Tom Landry to ask that the team quit assigning players hotel rooms based on race, and the Cowboys soon started assigning rooms based on names, end quote. That practice was definitely something that so many teams across pretty much any sport you can think of at the time practice, because the racial tension in society, in the push for so many people to have these segregated communities like this was at an all-time high. There was no question about it. So you can bet your ass that multiple teams in the NFL at the time were practicing this, even if they were starting to include more spots for black players on these teams. And let's be honest, many at the time were very reluctant to do so, if not for the talent that some of these individuals had. There's probably a great chance that they wouldn't have gotten on there, because that is how much hatred people held in their heart at the time. And they didn't even tend to value these people. They valued the amount of money that these people could make for them more. So they bared with it, but they weren't willing to fully embrace the person at all, which is kind of what that concept falls under. So the fact that you're able to have that kind of influence on Tom Landry, who, I'm not going to speculate on what his particular viewpoints were on this, but what I do know about Tom Landry is that he was certainly one of the more accomplished Cowboys coaches of all time. And I guess before they went on to win all those Super Bowls in the early 1990s and have that brief dynasty with Jimmy Johnson and Barry Switzer, he was regarded as the best Cowboys head coach of all time, and certainly the longest tenured, I believe. So to influence him in such a way where they, as a team, conducted themselves in an entirely different manner than what they were doing before is very huge. And, there was some speculation from other black players on the team about this move to trade him for Lance Allworth, as this quote says right here. Hall of Fame running back Calvin Hill said black players on the team were angry because they thought Norman was traded because of his political activism. He had participated in a protest in Dallas before the trade, end quote. That is interesting. Again, I can't assume that is true, but could you really, at the same time, in the heat of that time period, could you really put it past them? I mean, there have been many cases where protests and things like that have led to different people getting traded or moved on from these specific teams because they did not want to deal with the media and all of the extra press that would come as a result of these actions. And I mean, hey, if that was true, there's still a level of respect there because, these players likely had the notion that things like this could happen. It would take the right blend of circumstances to make a team reach that point where they'd want to part ways with you because of this. But it was a strong possibility at the time. So to put that on the line for the sole purpose of the common good and for the betterment of your people, that's commendable to say the least. He also managed to, again, going far beyond football when talking about him, According to this quote here, he became one of the first black banking executives in Dallas at a time where that industry was certainly predominantly white at the time. And he attended historically black Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, I probably can look this up real quick, but hey, just keeping it all in line with his true beliefs and core values. I do not know at the moment if Johnson C. Smith University is around. I can check that out right now. It is. So I'm certain as well that when it comes to that particular community, coming from there is a lot that so many people who attend that school now can take away from somebody who was a part of breaking the color barrier in this industry and taking what he learned from that school to make an impact. Whether it was small or major at that specific time, he went out and changed the world in his own way. And, again, that is the pinnacle of any sort of career for any person at the end of the day. That is the end goal. You want to go out and do as best as you can to change the world. For him, he did it in more positive ways, making sure that teammates like him in the moment and down the line didn't have to worry about all of the extra social tensions revolving around the sport at the time. Just going out and being able to step out on the field like everyone else in the locker room in the organization was afforded to do without all of the backlash. And very intentional deterrence on that end when it comes to that. So, it's unfortunate to hear that he did pass. But, again, he definitely lived a very accomplished life. And, for a man who was hard at work like this, just trying to do as best as he could on a day-by-day basis, to go on to be not only one of the team's most influential players, as they state in the second paragraph, but also know that he lived a long enough life, in a life with so much, productive labor in his case, to where in his older age, he would still fight the good fight, but he could take it easy. He could afford to have the luxury now where he has his own place to call home at this point, where he has his own area to peacefully reside in. And as they say here, he did pass away peacefully, unbothered. So that is what largely stands out to me here. You have to give him respect for what he did accomplish on the field, but you have to give him even more respect for what he did off of it, in the face of some of the most difficult things for any person to face in human history. And I'm sure it did get to him, get underneath his skin a few times. I'm very sure of it. Going through that type of stuff with all of these people, again, holding all this unnecessary hatred in their heart over the silliest of things, calling you out your name, stripping away all of your rights and all of your access to some of the most trivial things in society and even in a lesser extent. And still, he was able to break through and make a change. That's what counts the most. Moving on to some current news. Tristan Wirfs Jr. is set to miss the first 4 weeks of this upcoming season. He is going to be placed on the PUP list because he's still dealing with a knee problem that did linger on from last season, and he is getting surgery on it. It is definitely tough for the Bucs to not have his services for this time. Like, he has established himself as a great tackle as it is, then transitioned over to left tackle and became possibly the best blindside protector in the NFL. He literally, according to this article right here, did not give up a single sack last year and also gave up just 13 quarterback pressures, the fewest of any offensive tackle in the league. But even with the eye test, it's difficult for any of these defenders, any of these edge rushers, no matter how talented they are, to get the upper hand on Tristan Wirfs Jr. He's just that damn good. And, they're trying to supplement the problem because, they also moved on from Jalen Moore in the offseason, sent him over to the Chiefs. So at that point in time, they didn't have a left tackle at the moment. They're bringing in some 49ers free agent left tackle by the name of Charlie Heck. I'm not too familiar with who that is, and it's going to be a struggle, not just for the passing game, but also when it comes to trying to run the ball to the left side of the offensive line, because you're going to have a question as to whether or not this guy can uphold his potential leverage on the outside and prevent any of those particular players coming from that front from making any sort of impact on the game. They're probably going to have easy pickings. They have matches against very good defenses to start out the season. They have the Falcons, the Texans, the Jets, and the Eagles in their first 4 games. And he is going to be dealing with players who generate some of the most impactful pressure in the NFL from that specific side of the line. It's not going to be fun for them. Hopefully, though, they can manage. Baker Mayfield has certainly taken a rise. They're going to need him to get the ball out quick. Much quicker. And granted, he has improved at that part of his game. But he's not going to have the luxury of standing in the pocket for all that time. I just can't imagine that they're going to have this guy come in as a free agent and be able to truly replicate the greatness that Tristan Wirfs Jr. is executing right now. It's no shade on him, but again, Tristan Wirfs Jr. is literally the best offensive tackle in the league. And I guess some people will debate that Penei Sewell's a little bit better, honestly. I think he's right up there. But Tristan Wirfs Jr. has proven through his play, through the eye test, that he is a little bit better than him at this stage of his career. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. Hopefully he is able to recover speedily from this and be able to go back out on the field in due time and just get back to what he's been doing. He's going to be on a pretty good trajectory if he keeps this up. This is all I'm saying. He's still a very young player at this point of time. I don't even I can make sure to see what his age is real quick. Yeah, he's only 26 years old. Like, he has so many years ahead of him, you know? It was just a great decision. It continues to pay dividends, the fact that they drafted him, and now he's gone on to have this accomplished career in just such little time. You just imagine a few years down the line as he continues to get more experience and continue to pass protect in the elite way that he has. Oh my goodness. Like, I am not going to say too much right now. I don't want to say anything too crazy, but man, could make a name for himself to be one of the best left tackles and best general tackles of all time if he maintains this level of production. According to this article, the Vikings and their brass would donate $500,000 to support all of the rescue and recovery efforts going on as a result of the Texas floods ailing a couple of communities in that state. I have heard headlines about it, and it is truly unfortunate about, to hear what's happening down there and everything. You pray for all those people and hope that they do get the support that they need. Whether it's finding the necessary shelter, recalibrating and trying to pick back up the pieces, or maybe finding people that are missing, because there have also been reports about a high number of people in groups. I think there was a mention of a camp of people going missing, and I do not know if they've been found yet to this point, which is, there's a lot to be said about how the general government is handling this situation. And that's another story for another day. But at the very least, you do have people who are legitimately willing to do all they can to help. A lot of different pro sports teams at this point have pitched in donations. I did not mention that the Chiefs had also done this. The Vikings are now doing it. The NFL Foundation has done it. The Cowboys have done it. The Texans have done it. A few teams in the MLS have done it. The Mavericks have done it. The Spurs have done it. The Rockets have done it as well. A lot of different teams around that area just doing as best as they can to contribute. I even think that the Pelicans did it, if I'm not mistaken. All of them with $500,000 donations. Even if some of these teams aren't directly in Texas, right? You're trying to get as many people as you can to generally help, because in times like this, it does truly take a village. It doesn't matter where the help comes from. It means so much to the people who, aren't actually surviving this thing and trying to make sure that everything else surrounding them is somewhat intact, even in the midst of all this chaos. It means so much to have all of those people around doing the best that they can to provide that help. So you'll take it from anywhere. Oh yeah, there's something with the Astros doing it too. Yeah, so many people, so many different teams pitching in to do it. You gotta respect that. So hopefully, even more teams, if they elect to do so, choose to step in, intervene, and provide the best support they possibly can. I would imagine that there are probably more on the way. And, it's just good to see that even when, with some of these different teams, they're not even in full operation right now when it comes to their sporting. But they're still taking their time out to be beacons of support and help the community in the best way that they can. If only everybody was like that. Najee Harris would suffer a fireworks injury on Independence Day that affected not only him but other people surrounding him. Apparently, according to this article, it's a superficial eye injury. I just generally believe it's means that his vision is probably blurry, altered to some capacity. The physical appearance of his eye is probably shifted a little bit as well. And, as a running back, like, when it comes to the football sense, I'll just get it out since I'm already on this point, right? Like, you're gonna need to have elite ball carrier vision. And while I do generally question it anyways, when it comes to Najee Harris, he is an individual that is still very elite and has been very durable. He's played in every single possible game, despite a countless number of things that I've said about his game when it comes to criticism. So that's the most important thing. And anytime you have something like this coming up, it would certainly threaten his availability, and yet they still state that he should be ready for the NFL season. So you have to give him respect for that, and you also hope that he can recover from this. We've seen players in the past, like a Jason Pierre-Paul, suffer a far greater injury after dealing with fireworks. So we know we have a precedent as to how serious this can truly get. And to know that he's at least going to be okay in the long run is pretty good to see. Dallas Turner got himself in an interesting situation, to say the least. According to this article, in early February, apparently, he received a call from someone impersonating a banker, advising him to transfer money to a couple of businesses in order to prevent theft. And he eventually suspected it to be a scam, because according to this quote, he confirmed the situation after conferring with a family member of his that some shit wasn't adding up here. And eventually he's stating that in this alleged financial fraud scheme, he lost $240,000, with only $2,500 of that being recovered to this point. It's truly unfortunate, but once more, this is something that is highly common. I just mentioned that, incidents with fireworks for players are, far and few between, but they happen. Anyone trying to scam players in any sport, that is so common. And it's horrible to see that that's the case. But, this is where having more awareness about how these things work, especially when you're young, when it comes to how you get your finances in proper order, and, being able to tell the difference between general speak for a banker and, manipulation. which can still be hard even if you can tell the signs, right? Having that kind of experience with literacy in finance and a general understanding of the way these things work is important. Now, I'm not saying that every single person that, gets drafted into these sports at a young age don't know a lick about how to handle their money. But at the same time, whether it be through a lack of attention given to it by some parents out there, whether it be a lack of attention on it through schooling when it comes to the lack of specific classes on these things and other stuff of the sort, some of these younger athletes today are taught to believe a lot of what they hear and also spend as much money as they can at the same time. Because it's a lot easier for you to warrant such high contracts if you are a great player in your respective sport. And in so many cases, for every single success story you hear about a specific player accruing massive amounts of wealth, generational wealth for their families through their contracts, through different endorsements and sponsorships and things like that, you have those sequences where players blow off as much money as they can in such little time and ultimately are left with nothing by the end of their careers, or cases like this where they lose money by, being scammed, by being extorted by other individuals in different capacities. And, some of these things are genuinely unexpected. You can't prepare for everything. Some people just genuinely have bad intentions, and you won't really be privy to that fact until you experience it in real time. Hopefully, though, Turner can learn from this, be wary about it in the future, and just make sure that his money in general, even, if this is just $240,000 of whatever his current financial state is, you hope that your money, wherever you have it stored, is in a very secure place. And that you can move on from this with the experience to avoid these kinds of things in the long run. Because this is probably not the last time, even though this is being formally reported, I don't think it's the last time that some random person out there will try to target him or any other player for that matter for their money. It literally is something that any dumbass with great manipulation skills and I guess some understanding of the language and the tendencies that go into banking could pull off. Hopefully, as well, he can get his money back. Because, come on, man. Shit, bro. It's not cool, bro. Lastly, I kept on putting this off for whatever reason and just letting it fly over my head to discuss it real quick. But the NFL was found guilty of collusion against several players. In this particular case, it was dealing with a way that these contracts were being negotiated on the side of different ownership units and other members of the league. Some of the players that were cited and being affected by this were Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts as well, just to name a few. It's definitely fucked up. Like, why would you want to collude just to try to fuck over players? Like, this would, like, be displayed in the form of, like, some specific language in different contracts, as well as, like, trying to hold off on specific years of giving him their deals and things like that. Like, so the different amount of times that we kept on asking, like, why was it taking so long for some of these players in general to get their contracts? There was a little bit of a collusion behind it, unfortunately. It's a damn shame. And, you know, while the league is certainly going to have to deal with that and answer for it, because the league is becoming more and more profitable on a daily basis. And yes, you're going to want your money, but at the same time, even with me mentioning that you have the development of players, you know, accruing these massive contracts and blowing all this money off, or being able to turn their contracts into greater amounts of wealth overall, with all of the outside factors being mixed in here. The greatest takeaway in this particular era of sports, and we're seeing it with NIL as well, which I also have to make a video on how that's progressing in college football right now. But the bottom line is that players are becoming much more willing to advocate for themselves. They are starting, and I guess the trend has been in play for a little while, but they recognize what exactly their worth is, whether it be them representing themselves in agency without any agent to try to influence them, or with the help of a legitimate and trusted agent guiding them through the process, letting them know all the intricacies of working these negotiations, and also just gauging where specific markets are at for certain positions in all of these different sports. They recognize how much money they should be getting on a consistent basis. And you will have cases as well in this where people will still take pay cuts every now and then for the betterment of the team. But if it's not a situation like that, they're gonna make sure that they get all their money. And when they don't, there are bound to be some problems. It just is what it is now. Like, so for the NFL to be in this spot, knowing that these players are becoming much more aware in the midst of all of this about what their current financial value should be when it comes to these contracts, you're still going to try to play hardball with them and pull a fast one on them. And you really thought you were going to get away with it. That's a little crazy. But what I will say about it is that through some of the things that I have seen, what hurts even worse is that the NFLPA withheld all this evidence. Like, apparently there was something about them not putting out these details. Or, matter of fact, let me check myself real quick, right? Because, you know, that's a major statement. So I just want to make sure I'm right on this. Let me see. Yeah. No, literally. These reports right here. And apparently, according to multiple articles, as I'm looking at their headlines, the head of the NFLPA, Lloyd Howell, is facing massive scrutiny. And apparently, he is set to resign while also facing the potential of multiple cases being levied against him because of a conflict of interest. Apparently, they agreed, the league as a whole and the Players Association on the part of this guy, apparently, to keep these findings a secret. Why would you withhold that information? Especially as the head of the collective. Because, again, when making a statement like that, it's not going to be on the whole of the association. At the end of the day, it is made up of players. Former players serving as staffers and current players in the collective as we speak. Do you really believe that players who currently advocate for different changes in collective bargaining agreements every 4 years or so, and who try to create as many initiatives as they can to benefit other players like themselves, do you really believe for 1 second that they would do everything in their power to withhold that information, knowing that in these specific cases of collusion, these players weren't protected at all? You think they would put themselves at even greater risk of this for the sole purpose of profit? No. The higher-ups in both of these entities made this happen. And to see that that's the case, it's just fucking crazy. Like, you should want to protect your players. It's the whole purpose of having the collective in the first place. And you think that the best method of doing so was to let these owners and other officials in the NFL get off easy with a slap, not even a slap on the wrist. You were gonna keep this shit classified? You weren't gonna put it out to the public and let niggas think that these different players around the NFL were just not playing ball and just being all of the, like, adjectives with negative connotations imaginable. Oh, they were just being, I guess, I don't know, a little bit arrogant about their contract talks. They weren't playing ball with us. They were very stubborn in their handling of the situation. No, nigga, it was the owners doing the shit. All the talk in the media, when it did come time for these contract extensions, centered around how the players, for the most part, were the proprietors of these long wait times. And in some cases they were, but clearly not in all cases. And that clarity changes everything, which is why I guess the NFL didn't want it out. But that is only right at the end of the day. Because there is literally no point of having a collective for the players, by the players, if you're gonna try to fuck them over like that. Like, that is insane, bruh. Come on, man. Would have been so much better for me to talk about that as it was unfolding in real time. And honestly, it still is, given that this nigga literally decided to keep this shit in private. How? Like, these are your players being affected. It is your duty in making this collective to keep them protected in every single way. So, not putting out these findings about this is just very, very fishy stuff. And while all these other reports are coming out about it, I believe they mentioned, and I saw a video titled about the entire case in the first place. And I want to say this. You have all these sources coming out with information on a day-by-day basis as things continue to get unraveled. But the very first person to go public with this news was former ESPN reporter Pablo Torre on his particular podcast. Now, given the title of it, there are certainly some creative ways he will find this information. But by getting his hands on this and making that episode on the collusion going on in the NFL, he might have honestly changed the course of the way they will go on in operating and in having that news break. And with all of this aftermath going on now, this next NFL CBA in about 3 years from now, oh boy, oh my goodness, it changes everything. It gives the players even more leverage now to get theirs in a time where, with media rights all over, again, their profit, their general revenue is increasing on a per year basis as it is. And now, in knowing that these niggas were trying to get a select few to take on an amount of money that was far lower than what they were truly worth, that's going to embolden so many athletes in the next few years to do so. And even before that, when I've talked about these different holdouts, when I mentioned what's been going on with Shamar Stewart this entire offseason, it's already happening. So the day of NFL owners being able to pull that shit off behind the scenes and under the table could be, as far as we know it in a few years' time, effectively over. Because now they've been caught. They tried to keep it a secret, and the NFLPA, the head of the NFLPA, might be going down in this situation as well. There is no returning back to the old way you did things. If you don't change that around, you're going to start seeing more players hold out and potentially choose other options outside the NFL. When it comes to the spring league, when it comes to other leagues like the CFL and things like that, or maybe even entirely different sports in general. And that's what they don't want, because that will make them lose money and in turn make their product weaker. Maybe that should then send enough of a message for them to stop fucking around with the players like that. And you'd hope that it would. So again, that's definitely late on my end to cover it. As more things, if I do hear another major development about it, I'll definitely try my best to get on that, of course. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.